and I'll share screen. Here we go. Okay. So the graduate diploma in cardiac sonography is a 2-year course. If you do the masters, you need to do those first 2 years as well. The masters is a 3rd year. So the agenda for the meeting this afternoon, or this presentation, go through aims, then the design of the course, resources, expectation, faculty, and you can ask any questions at the end, or interrupt if something's really unclear as we go along. So the aim is to provide the students with really clearly defined training so that you develop knowledge, skills, and the professional abilities, so that you perform high quality ultrasound examinations. I mean, that's what's going to be a big emphasis. It's on quality exams rather than the focus on quantity. We will focus on quality. In order to do that, 2D imaging remains I think fundamental in terms of what's currently used in the workplace. There are other technologies like 3D that are becoming more popular. Nonetheless, 2D remains the mainstay, and still 2D images are the ones that most clinical decisions remain or still based on. Obviously, Doppler, including color Doppler. Tissue Doppler is becoming more widely used, and that'll certainly be part of the course. Hopefully you'll be able to develop and refine the skills you already have, so that they're by the end of the course, they're really, really strong skills in all of these different imaging applications. And we've got some fancy images here, strain images, the one looping there at the moment, and some 3D images as well, because you'll be given some exposure to these. But what we want to do is provide a good grounding, so that when you do start using these applications, you've got all the foundational skills that enable you to apply those things really, really well. Everything good so far?
Yes. Yeah.
Great. So, in short, there are 3 areas that we'll focus on: the development of knowledge, skills, and professionalism. So knowledge, obviously cardiac anatomy and physiology, and in the first place, normal cardiac anatomy and physiology will be the focus. And clearly it's necessary to understand the normal anatomy really well, so that when there is a pathology, when something's abnormal, you can identify that also. And then starting really in 2nd semester in this first year, and then building on that in semester 1 next year, and semester 2 going to pathophysiology. So when things go bad, in all this year there'll be ultrasound physics. I'll describe a little bit what's involved in that later on, but be pleased to know that you've got a really good physics tutor, Rob Gill, who is a real expert. Ultrasound physics is the one who's going to be giving you the lectures and the tutorials for physics, so you'll be in really good hands. And then skills, ultrasound machine operation. Obviously, operating the machine is a really important skill that you'll need to refine, as well as acquiring, as I said, good quality images and making accurate measurements is another important skill. And then professionalism. Obviously, there's aspects unique to sonography that we'll want to focus on. One of them being communication, and other things related to that enable you to, once you finish the course, then to be able to recognize how you can further improve over the course of your career. Troy, I'm just going to exit out of here just for a moment. I just heard my email notification. And no, okay, I can I can ignore that one for the moment. I'm just going to mark that as unread. Sorry, I just want to make sure that no one misses out. So can you see the course learning outcomes slide there? Yeah. Troy, clinical training remains a really important thing. We've spoken about your clinical training, and continuing that is throughout the duration of the course is really important. Fortunately, you've got a good deal of experience, and I'm really pleased about that. But the course couldn't proceed without students having that. One of the reasons being is the course is accredited by ASAR, the Australian Sonographers Accreditation Registry, and they ask us to do certain things, and one of them is that we ensure all students are enrolled at least, or rather all students are working at least 3 days per week in cardiac sonography for the duration of the course. So that's one of the reasons it's important, but also, obviously, echo is a skill that you don't acquire just via, reading a textbook. It's, not only theory, but you need to be practicing that skill in order to really learn it well and apply it really well. Yeah. Now, don't pay too much attention to the date there. That's already gone. But when you get a chance, you may well already have done that. If you have, just forget everything I'm about to say. But if you can just send me the phone number and email address of your supervisor, just so that I've got a way of just contacting them. I want to contact all supervisors just to say, thank you for supporting, the students, giving them a little bit of an idea of what the course involves, telling them a little bit about the aims of the first semester, and I want them to know that they can contact me at any time. I mean, I want us, all to be working in the same or towards the same goal, which is having you guys successfully, complete the course after 2 years. This one just gives an indication of the hours. So if you were to do 3 days a week, for the duration of the course, by the end of it, there'd be about 1,400 hours that you do. So you get lots of time in the clinical setting. Over the 2 years, just like what will happen in this first semester, you do 2 units each semester, and the units always have a similar name. So you do a Principles of Cardiac Sonography unit and a Practice of Cardiac Sonography unit. The Principles of Cardiac Sonography units deal with the theory, and the Practice of Cardiac Sonography with the practice. So in first semester, the principles will cover cardiac anatomy and physiology and ultrasound physics. Now, ultrasound physics is not a standalone unit, nor is anatomy and physiology. They're sort of grouped together. In the practice of cardiac sonography, there's image acquisition, ultrasound operation, communication, and some professional practice things. So units always have those same names. The reason the course has been designed like this is because we want to, it's focused on developing particular skills. And I think sometimes if you sort of put units in a box, as it were, or compartmentalize things, sometimes it's a little bit hard to see how they actually come together. While there are one unit is theory and one unit is the practice, what we hope you will appreciate that the principles, the theory will support the practice and vice versa. So you need to be doing both of them at the same time. And that will be the way that it's done throughout the course. Any questions so far there?
Everything seems
good,
to be
good.
Yep.
Okay. So the way the course has been developed is using what's in the teaching field called a spiral curriculum. So what all that sort of means is that fairly early on you're exposed to a good number of concepts or aspects that will be dealt with throughout the course. But to start with, you learn a little bit about them, and then over time, each time that particular concept or that particular disease or whatever it might be is encountered, you build on that initial learning, so that over time, your understanding is growing further and further. So what that means in practice is, if we're looking at a skill, say at recognizing and measuring left ventricular systolic function, in the first year, what the focus will be is trying to identify how to evaluate global left ventricular systolic function, so overall function. Whereas in second year, that will be extended a little bit further to look for regional abnormalities as well. And as you know, if someone's got coronary artery disease, it may well be that their left ventricular systolic function, the global function, is reasonably good, but there is a certain region that's not working well. So we won't leap straight into the regional function, because it's important. The first step is looking at the global function. A similar thing will happen with the valve disease. So initially, we'll look at qualitative assessment. So literally, if you're looking, for example, at valvular regurgitation, how broad the jet of colour is, that's indicates blood is flowing backwards. Working out ways to sort of identify whether that's mild or moderate or severe regurgitation. And then in second year, doing more of the quantitative analysis, so that you can actually quantitate, you can put a number to that in order to help support the evaluation you make. And lastly, what that means with adult congenital heart disease is, in first year you learn a little bit about cardiac development, then in second year you look at common congenital heart disease lesions. So Troy, what I did just last week is I took a screenshot of the university website, the home page of the university. So that's what it looks like.
Yeah.
So when you're going to access Views, which is the e-learning platform, what you'll notice is up on the top left-hand side there are 4 letters, VUWS. So that is Views. That's the e-learning platform. So click that, and then a page something similar to this will come on your screen, and you're asked to complete your username and password, and then log in. And eventually, you should be able to access a page that looks just like this. This is the site for the first year of the course, Graduate Diploma in Cardiac Sonography, Year 1. This is what the site looks like, and this is what you're going to have to be very familiar with. This is where you, as I was saying before we started the recording, this is how, for example, you're going to access lectures. In second year, this is how you submit a lot of your assessments. This is where you'll access recommended reading, etc., etc.
Yeah.
There are a couple of quick links there that are circled. Some of them I would recommend that you take a good look at sooner rather than later. The learning guides, so they're the learning guides for each of the units that you're going to undertake this semester, and then the timetables, just so that you're aware of things. I will go into those and discuss them briefly in this introduction, but they'll be there for you to look at in more detail. On the left-hand side of the screen is the menu, and that's where you access most of your things. So that's where you, as I was saying earlier, will be able to access things such as lectures. And I'll go on to that a little bit later. With lectures in mind, these are the lectures, and this is the timetable of the lectures for this first semester. The principles of cardiac sonography on this, as we're looking at the screen, the left-hand side, and the practice on the right-hand side. So lectures started this week. So available already are the first principles of cardiac sonography lecture, which is called Features of the Cardiovascular System and its Development. And also available is the first practice of cardiac sonography lecture, which is essential aspects of professional practice and echocardiographic imaging. Now, most lectures are online, so you can watch them, whenever you like. I would recommend that you try and keep up. I mean, sometimes, some weeks, just for whatever reasons, work or family or other commitments mean that it's hard. But the further you get behind, the more content you're trying to catch up on. Lectures, give or take, are about 30 minutes, and that doesn't sound like a lot, but a 30-minute online lecture, you can cover quite a lot of material in that 30 minutes because it's just, it's 30 minutes of material uninterrupted. So it's reasonably condensed. So yeah, most of them are online. When you guys come on campus in week 6 in April, there'll be a couple of face-to-face lectures by 2 cardiologists. Timothy Tan and Susanna Shu, you'll meet them then. The rest of them will all be available to you to access via views.
Okay.
So far, so good?
Yep.
Great.
So that would be the first one too. I mean, we'll be going to the campus.
That's right.
Yep.
That's in April. Yep.
I'll come up later. Would that date be announced, or it's already?
I'm about to tell you that.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah. No, no worries. Just give me a couple of slides, and we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
With regards to the lectures, obviously we need textbooks to support what we're dealing with. For the practice of cardiac sonography, the echo textbook will be available via View, so you don't have to purchase if you don't want to. There's an e-textbook available to you. It's a full textbook called Essential Echocardiography. The physics textbook is the one textbook in the course that you won't have access to. So it needs to be purchased. Now, it's entirely up to you. There are other textbooks that cover similar material, but the one specifically written by Rob, who gives the lectures as well, will be for purchase, and I can show you how to go about that a little bit later on.
Mm-hmm.
So I was telling you earlier, where I'm located. So this is what the building looks like. As I was saying, it's right next to Blacktown Hospital. What it doesn't show is that the hospital is undergoing a major redevelopment. It's going to be the 3rd biggest hospital in Sydney very soon. So there's a lot of things happening here. But this is where you come most often. There are some exams, and they are the written exams that are done out at Campbelltown, which is where the main School of Medicine is. But most of the time when you come to on-campus things, it's here at Blacktown.
Okay.
The idea of the on-campus sessions is to provide you with lots of practical learning and a chance to rehearse some of your imaging skills with myself and the other people who are involved in the course there, just to give you some tips to further improve your imaging technique, whether it be the way you acquire the images, etc., etc. So they're really practically related. There'll be ultrasound machines, volunteer patients, cardiac, sheep's hearts for you to cut up on one occasion, and a few things like that to hopefully really help you with your learning. So here's a document that's available via Views. It's got all the key dates for this particular semester. So we're in week 2 and lectures have commenced. In week 6, that must be a typo. It must be end of week 4, I guess. Yeah, must be end of week 4. So by the 31st of March, the date's right, is what's called census. Now, the census date is really important in that after that, if for any reason you need to change your enrollment status, i.e. if you just can't do something, it gets hard to withdraw from the course after that date. So I just want to flag that with you, because it's the date beyond which, you know, the university expecting you to, you know, realize that, you know, there's a fee, you know, to undertake the course, and it makes it hard to justify why, you know, you pull out without any sort of penalty, as it were. The first on-campus session here at Blacktown, the dates are the 9th to the 13th of April. The 9th is a Monday, the 13th is a Friday. The times for that aren't set in stone just yet, but roughly speaking, each day will start at about 2 p.m. Some of the days slightly earlier, some of the days slightly later, and go till about 8 p.m. That's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Monday the 9th, Tuesday the 10th, Wednesday the 11th, Thursday the 12th. They'll be about 2 till 8 p.m. So they're afternoon and evening sessions. The Friday is the one exception. It will be 9 a.m. till about midday. Monday to Thursday will be mainly practical things. The Friday will be a physics tutorial, and then some tutorials about the end of session written exams. So that's roughly the format of the on-campus session. Now, Troy, based on your practical experience, we'll chat about which perhaps sessions are you know, of most benefit to you. But I suggest that you come along, because, you know, not only will you get, you know, some good practical tips and things, but you'll, you know, meet other students, and it's meant to be a chance, you know, to get to know you know, the faculty, to get to know the other students, etc., etc. Yeah. I'll go into assessments in a moment, but as you can see, the first assessment is not until week 7, and that's an online exam. In week 13, there are 2 more online exams, and I'll tell you a little bit about those later on. There are 2 breaks, one in week 8, which is just an inter-session break, so there'll be no new material presented to you there, or no assessment. And there's what's called STUVAC at the end of May, and that's just a week, again, of no more material to perhaps, you know, review all the material that has been given to you over the course of the semester. And then the written and practical exams happen at the end of the semester. So just with those arrows, just indicating times when you'll definitely need to come on campus. Firstly to Blacktown, and then for the written exam for Campbelltown. The practical exam happens here at Blacktown. The other assessments, the online ones, just like you're doing today, can be, you know, accessed wherever you have access to the internet. The online exams are, you know, you can do them. Yeah. So far, so good?
Yes. Yeah.
Great. So for the Principles of Cardiac Sonography unit, there are 3 assessment items. 2 quizzes, online quizzes, and 1 final exam. The online quizzes, the way they run is you using Views, you access the quiz, and there'll be clear instructions about how to access them. And then they're made available to you over a period of about 30 hours. So typically it will be a Thursday afternoon that they're first made available. In week 7, it will be the Thursday at 5 p.m. And you can do the online quiz anytime that Thursday night, all the way until midnight on Friday. So you've got about a 30-hour window in which to do the quiz. The quiz involves 20 multiple choice questions that need to be done in 30 minutes. So that's the format. It's the same format for the second one. May I suggest that you make sure that, well, the quizzes you can have notes there before you, and obviously use those to help you with the quiz, but make sure it's your own work. So the very first question you'll be asked is, are you working independently? And obviously for exams, we ask you to do so. We want to know what you know about the content, not what someone else does. So that's an important thing. It's you who's being tested. So these quizzes, it's really important that they're very sort of honest about undertaking. Ultimately, if a student was not to be so, it's just it's only themselves that they're going to disadvantage. The final exam is worth 65%. It's a combination of multiple choice, short answer and long answer questions. It's done at Campbelltown in the exam period on a Friday, and it's 2 hours duration. So that's toward the end of June is the final exam worth 65%. The practice of cardiac sonography has 4 assessment items. 3 of the items are weighted, which means 3 of the items are given a mark, a numerical mark, whereas the logbook is deemed either satisfactory or unsatisfactory. With the logbook, it still needs to be submitted, even though it's not formally marked. It is assessed, and it's what's called a threshold item. So for the practice of cardiac sonography, there are 2 threshold items. That is, items that need to be passed in order for you to pass the unit: the practical exam and the logbook. And I'll mention those to you in just a moment. The quiz for the practice of cardiac sonography, one unit happens in week 13. It is run exactly the same way as the quizzes are for the principles of cardiac sonography. The written exam is very similar to the written exam for the principles of cardiac sonography. The written exam for the practical is slightly shorter and in duration, and there are fewer questions. The practical exam happens here at Blacktown, and there are imaging tasks for you to do. So there'll be patients here, and there'll be a couple of stations, likely 3, whereby you've just got to acquire some images and identify a few of those things on your images. There'll be parasternal images or apical images, and you'll be asked, obviously, to acquire a good image, to make a measurement, etc., etc. As well as that, there might be another station with some anatomical models, and you'll be asked to indicate what valve is what, etc., etc. That's how the practical exam works. I'll tell you a little bit more about the logbook in a moment, because there's a slide about the logbook. The student logbook in first year will require, by the end of it, that you've got a log of 475 exams. Now, for you, Troy, I anticipate that this is not going to be difficult. For others, it may well be so. And just because we're recording this, just let me detail some of the important aspects of the logbook. For people who are first starting out, in the first semester, all they need to submit is a logbook with 175 studies. Now, that can include those that they have observed to start with. So, initially, no one can pick up an ultrasound probe straight away and start imaging, obviously. It requires some observation to start with. And up to 75 studies can be, entered into your logbook, which are observed only. But at a certain point, the student's got to start acquiring images. Now, in order to call an exam, one that you've done yourself, you need to have taken at least 50% of the images. So once you're at that stage, you can start, entering those into your logbook, and that will, count towards the number of full studies that you've done. In semester 2, the number of studies that need to be done is a little bit more, 300, so that by the end of the year, there's a total of 475. The logbook needs to look at something like this. Down the bottom there's an example of a logbook that one of the students submitted a couple of years ago. It was a particularly nice one in that it was simple, and that's really all we're after. But it needs to have 4 things. It needs to have a date for each examination in one of the columns. Each of the exams needs to be identified, so have a unique patient identifier. What I don't want you to do, and I'll send the logbook back to you if this is the case, is don't identify patients, with their full name and date of birth. I mean, that's, we want to protect their privacy to some degree, but some identify so that if you do need to go back and look at them, it's reasonably easy to know who that patient is. The details of the type of exam, and what I mean by that is just in terms of making sure that, all students do a good variety of studies. You want to either call an exam either a left ventricular function study or a valve structure and function study. And the way I think to work out whether it's one or the other is what is the cardiologist asking for, or what is the indication for the exam. If it's, LV function, obviously you're going to call it LV function study. If a patient's got a murmur or something like that, it's much more likely that they're going to be interested in valves, so call it a valve structure and function study. Subtotals, so the total according to that particular criteria that I mentioned, and a cumulative total as well is the other thing on the logbook. So yeah, that's in short what the logbook looks like. So far, so good.
Yeah.
So getting back to the website, the e-learning site rather, the site looks like this. In order to access resources, or rather, this is where a lot of the resources are accessed, and also is the way in which I communicate to you guys most often. I'll post announcements every week. There'll be at least one each week. Oftentimes more than that, 2 or 3. I mean, I try not to post a dozen. I mean, I think that would be just unnecessary. But oftentimes there are several. There might be 2 or 3. So just access the site, a couple of times each week, just to make sure you keep on top of things. And the announcements can be seen in 2 spots. As I was saying earlier, via the site, you can access almost all of the textbooks, and that'll be the same in second year too. In first year, the Handbook of Cardiac Anatomy, Physiology and Devices is what we're using for the principles of cardiac sonography in terms of the anatomy. The practice of cardiac sonography will be the essential echocardiography textbook. Physics, as I was saying earlier on, if you want the physics textbook, these are the details with regards to how to go about getting either an ebook or a hard copy of the physics textbook. don't worry about taking a photo of this or writing this down. These slides will be available, and you can access this via the View site.
Yeah. Okay.
Don't worry about the fine print here. I'll try and go through with it, but there are certain things we expect. We expect you to keep up to date and make sure that you're aware when assessment items are due, because if, for example, there's some conflict, something that just cannot be sort of dealt with any other way, and you need to delay an assessment by a day or something like that. If you tell me sooner rather than later, it's going to be a lot easier. Make sure you submit your own work. As I was saying, those online exams are what's most important in that regard. It's really important that you are doing the right thing, ultimately, by yourself. When you come on campus, there'll be volunteer patients here. So obviously we ask you to be really appreciative and treat the patients here respectfully, and the other students too. If there are tutorials and that kind of thing here, I mean, I think it's nice just to obviously you've got your phone with you, you might put it on silent or something like that. And as well as, just when you're on campus, a dress code, I would say just, casual clothing, but obviously, jeans or pants that, are appropriate. I would encourage you not to wear singlets if you're so inclined. I mean, just a shirt with some sleeves and some decent shoes, because we've got volunteer patients who come here and other students as well, and we want to set a reasonably good standard. In terms of what to expect from there, I mean, everything. There's lots of things available already via Views. And if you're unsure where to find anything, just let me know. I'll endeavour to give you as much warning or advanced notice, I should say, about assessment items and things like that. I'll try to instruct everyone in the same way. That, I mean, obviously everyone, some people need different instructions, and some people may need a little bit more help than others, but I want to, what I make available to one student, I want to make available to everyone. I want to be fair and mark things. And if anything, does happen that mean an assessment items needs to be either re-looked at or something like that, I've got to be, approachable. So you can certainly expect that from the staff, academic staff. Myself, Anne-Marie Hennessy is the Dean of the School of Medicine. You won't see her in the first year, but then the second year she gives a lecture, and obviously by the time graduation comes around, you'll see her at graduation. There are two cardiologists who've been particularly influential in helping to establish the course, Suzanne Eshu and Timothy Tan, and they'll give lectures this semester. The sonographers, Fernando and Anita, you'll see them both at the on-campus session and exams. Julie, who's the admin person, you won't see her, but she does a lot of things in the background. Specialist people, Rob Gill teaches the physics. Rob is outstanding. It's a really great way of explaining difficult concepts simply. David Tannis is another cardiologist who will give a tutorial on congenital heart disease in second year. Lily Collison is a really helpful person. She'll give a tutorial in second year because there's some case studies that are due, and she'll give you some tips on that. But if ever you need to email her, about something in the library, she's the kind of person that will get back to you really quickly. There's some email addresses there for certain people, myself, Julie, Lily, and Anne-Marie, and you can contact any of those people. Anne-Marie's a really busy person, and you can certainly send her an email if it's really necessary, but I'm perhaps the best point of contact to start with. I mean, if there's something that you want to address have addressed by the dean. And, it's not for me. That's fine. Email Anne-Marie, but usually try and run things past me. Finally, there is a scholarship available. So this scholarship is available only for people in the course. So people who have enrolled in the course, and each year this is made available. Applications are due by the 31st of March. The scholarship is worth $10,000 per year for the 2-year course, and that $10,000 is awarded, I think, in 2 installments. Maybe it's 4, but anyway, $2,000 in the first year of the scholarship, and $10,000 in the first year, $10,000 in the second year. All students are eligible. Obviously, there are criteria, and when you make application, you'll see those criteria. There's some questions to answer. The note down at the bottom here says preference may be given to applicants who identify as Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander. And that's one of the real motivations for establishing the scholarship, is to try and help people from backgrounds that have some educational disadvantages. So what that means is if there were, for example, 2 applicants with very similar applications, who the committee weren't sure how to separate. If one of them was Aboriginal, the other one wasn't, it's much more likely to go to the person who's in Indigenous heritage. So that's the scholarship. That's the slideshow, Troy. I think we've made reasonable time, but there's certainly a chance for some questions now if you'd like to ask them. I'll just go back to Zoom here. Stop sharing that. I'll also